With spring right around the corner, maybe you like me, you're excited to get out for longer walks and runs, pick up a new book to read outside, or just get out and explore new neighborhoods and food. Or we could do all three wrapped in one. Our friends over at Read and Run Chicago are expanding to nearby Lamont for 3 different meetups. The group is like a combination running club, book club, and neighborhood tour, and each route in Lamont is about 3 miles paired with a different book from Pat Kamalier's Koratazi Historical Mystery Series. Afterwards, you'll get to sit down with the author and historian and sample some food from local restaurants. The first run is Saturday, March 23rd. Spots are limited and are going to go fast, so register now at readandrunchicago.com or find the link on their Instagram at readandrunchicago. Today on CityCast Chicago, we're following a measles outbreak at a Pilsen migrant shelter, talking about how a Bronzeville apartment complex became a city landmark, and celebrating 3 local entrepreneurs who are having their grand openings today. Joining me to break it all down from Borderless Magazine, Katrina Pham, and Block Club Chicago's Jamie Nesbitt Golden. It's Friday, March 15th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Morning, Jamie. Welcome back to CityCast.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Scooty gang. Scooty gang.
Scooter gang, scooter gang. Katrina, when it gets to this time of the year, we start celebrating that the scooters are going to be being put back on the streets of Chicago. And so that's where the scooter gang reference comes.
Oh, I see.
Katrina, welcome to CityCast Chicago for the first time. We're excited to have you.
Woohoo, thanks for having me.
It's going to be a fun conversation today as we go through good news, as we look back on some big stories. But let's start with the conversation we had earlier this week. We're starting to kind of dip our toe in considering Summertime Shy as a real thing this year because this was the week that music festivals started to release their lineups. You had the lineups released from Pitchfork and Ravinia. I went to Pitchfork last year, and honestly, a few of these acts made me feel like I might go again this year. I saw Kara Jackson on there, Brittany Howard, De La Soul. I might need to go see The Roots out at Ravinia on August 24th. But the biggest music festival in Chicago, maybe the most headache-inducing one, is Lollapalooza. And they are announcing their lineup next week. Most people I talk to aren't budgeting for Lolla, aren't planning for it. But, Jamie, I want to start with you. If you were going to pay, not get a press pass, not get a photo pass, if you were going to pay for Lollapalooza, who would have to be headliner?
So the last time I went to Lolla, the first and last time, it was the Foo Fighters.
Okay.
And we got the platinum package, which is basically like an endless, like all you can eat, drink, perfect. You get the VIP like seating and all that. And it was great. And that's the only way I'm gonna see or go back to Lolla is if Dave Grohl once again decides to bless the festival with his presence. And
that was a recent performance, so you got some time.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the best part of, this is the best part of Chicago. Like the summertime festivals are insane. So, I'm ready. Let's go.
Katrina, are you a Lollapalooza fan? And if not, who would have to be there for you to spend a little bit of extra coin for the summer?
I would definitely say I'm a little bit of a Lolla girly, but
okay,
I think it goes on and off. Because some years, I think 3 years ago, we had a pretty good lineup. Post Malone, Miley Cyrus, among others. 2 years ago was okay. And last year, I went to Lolla for all 4 days. Because I really liked the lineup. I think Kendrick was there.
All 4 days?
You are a soldier.
I love that my opening question assumes people ain't even going. And he was like, actually, as long as you got some dope people there, I might be there for 2, 3, all 4 days. I love that. So, Katrina, who is on your hopeful list this year that would get you to go back again?
This might be aiming too high, But low-key, I'm trying to see SZA. If she's at Lala, like,
Come on.
I will go crazy.
There's a fantastic list of people between our hopefuls, the people who will be playing at Ravinia, Pitchfork. We'll drop those lineup announcements in the show notes. But once Lollapalooza announces its major lineup next week, we will keep you in touch. And for Katrina, our newest guest on City Cast Chicago, I got my fingers crossed that SZA will pull up for you.
Please,
I got my
SZA,
fingers
please.
crossed.
I couldn't get those concert tickets when you came to Chicago, but please come to Lala.
Every single week on City Cast Chicago, we like to bring in these amazing voices from across the city to talk about the important stories that were happening in Chicago this week. And Katrina, we brought you in here with one big story on our radar. And that is the sort of scary news that there has been an outbreak of measles in the city of Chicago, specifically around a particular shelter in Pilsen. Can you kind of catch people up on what is happening?
Yeah, so this is the first time Chicago has seen measles since 2019. So it's been a minute since measles has been in the area. But it's a little scary because, you know, migrants in the shelter are living in close quarters. There's something like 2,400 people living in this shelter, right? A lot of them are unvaccinated. There's actually 8 cases of measles now in the Halstead shelter, which is the shelter in Pilsen, which is Chicago's largest migrant shelter.
Yep.
In addition to 2 people in Chicago. I think what's important to know from city officials is they're saying that, you know, be mindful that the migrants weren't the people who brought the measles to Chicago. They're saying it was already kind of circulating in the city. And then folks who were coming to the city, like immigrants and coming to the area, were catching it somehow, probably because a lot of them were unvaccinated. But so far, I think the first child who got measles is recovering and is no longer infectious, according to the health department. The second child who had measles is hospitalized, but they're saying that they're in good condition.
Okay. And for people who may not be familiar, measles is a highly contagious virus, which can cause serious symptoms that can lead to pneumonia and other potentially life-threatening complications. And officials say you should be quarantining for about 21 days. But again, when you talk about over 2,000 people staying in close quarters at one shelter in Pilsen, that is very hard. How have city and state officials responded?
So Chicago Department of Public Health has partnered with Illinois Department of Public Health to try to vaccinate people. People without vaccinations or mothers and young children have been being moved out of the shelter into unnamed hotels throughout Chicago, specifically pregnant women, people with babies, those who are not able to get vaccinated, right? They're moving them out so that they're not at risk of getting the measles. But they also brought in the CDC this week to try to help with speeding up those vaccinations, right? Because there's so many people in the shelter. People are moving in and out. They tried to do a quarantine. When the first measles case was found, they tried to do a quarantine, but that was really scary for residents because they kind of didn't really know what was happening. They're like, okay, we're shutting it down. We're shutting down the shelter. No one's allowed to leave, right? Because we have this measles case and we don't want it to spread. But there was a lot of miscommunication between shelter residents and staff about what was happening. And so we were hearing on the ground from people that they're really confused about what was happening. But now they're having more vaccinations and now they're bringing in people from the CDC to try to help a little bit and speed those things up. So hopefully there won't be more cases, but I think that the vaccination process is still in progress and there's still a lot of people who need to be vaccinated.
One other question I have for you, Katrina, because we've been following these updates on a seemingly day by day, week by week basis. And right now at this moment, you've got a measles outbreak happening. You have people arriving still to the city daily. You have eviction notices being given out. You have lawsuits and grievances being filed against officials. How difficult is it to follow this story, to stay updated on what's taking place in these shelters, what's happening to asylum seekers and migrants when they leave shelters in attempts to, gain rental assistance and move out into more stable housing? How difficult it is to follow all of these different moving parts?
There's so much going on. I mean, like you said, and then you think about the people who are out migrating from shelters or people that are going to be kicked out this Saturday. It's like roughly, I think the city estimates 5,000 people who are in that group of people who are being kicked out on Saturday. And many of them don't have work permits yet. And that kind of means, okay, they don't have work permits. That means they don't have money to pay for an apartment.
Exactly.
Chicago also has an affordable housing problem. So it's not like they could easily find an apartment anyway, right? So there's just so many things going on. And I think that what also makes it even more difficult, right, is city's keeping a lot of this stuff behind closed doors. Like no one's allowed to go into the Halstead shelter. Volunteers aren't allowed to go in there. And so we had to do a lot of digging, a lot of investigating, and also a lot of talking to people on the ground, right? Talking to migrants and saying, like, what are you kind of experiencing right now? And hopefully using their anecdotes and their stories to shine a light on what the city and state is doing.
The City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs and Consumer Protection offers a free entrepreneur certificate program for future and current business owners in Chicago. Participants must complete 6 webinars within 6 months in designated webinar categories. Graduates are eligible to apply for the CIBC Bank USA Entrepreneur Loan Program, a bank partner with BACP. The long-standing program was created to support startup or early-stage small businesses gain entrepreneur training with important working capital. Since the program launched, more than 1,000 Chicago entrepreneurs and business owners have successfully completed the program. Completing the process is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Number 1, register by signing up at chicago.gov/BACP certificate. Number 2, attend 6 webinars by registering for upcoming webinars at chicago.gov/BACP webinars. And number 3, graduate from the program and you'll receive your digital certificate and information on connecting with CIBC Bank USA. To learn more about the BACP Entrepreneur Certificate Program, please visit chicago.gov/BACP certificate.
Does Monday at the office feel like a storm? Not with Microsoft Copilot. That feeling when Copilot gets everyone up to speed instantly? It's sunny again. When Copilot simplifies complex data so your teams can act, that sun's shining on a beach. And when Copilot uncovers hidden insights, you're on that beach with your people, and you find buried treasure. That's Microsoft Copilot. Learn more at Microsoft.com/AI for all.
Many of the difficulties that face new arrivals not only highlight the ongoing immigration problems at the federal level, but they really highlight in the immediate Chicago's affordable housing crisis, not only for new arrivals who have difficulty finding affordable housing. This goes for people who've been priced out of Chicago's rising rents. This goes for people experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity. And one huge measure that is on the March 19th primary ballot that tries to secure a funding source, at least for those maybe 6 to 60,000 people experiencing housing security living in Chicago, is the Bring Chicago Home referendum. And I know for people listening, this can be very confusing. We've done episodes explaining what Bring Chicago Home is. We've done episodes on the courts shooting down and then reversing order on Bring Chicago Home. And this week, it feels like that sort of final Hail Mary by opponents to the referendum took their shot with the state Supreme Court. Jamie, what was the results of that action?
So basically, the court sided with the backers of the Bring Chicago Home ordinance. So it's going to be on the ballot this coming primary. You know, the ordinance has been a point of contention for land owners and property owners who believe that this is just going to hit them hard in the pockets. We've also seen a barrage of ads and attack ads from realtor organizations sort of pushing back and saying that this is just going to, burden middle income folks, which isn't exactly the case. I know you guys have already talked about this ad nauseum on here, but it's just really about making sure that people pay their fair share.
Yeah, so much of the conversation that I've heard people having is reminding people where affordable housing sits in terms of the intersection of Chicago's problems, the things we're trying to deal with when we talk about segregation, when we're talking about providing resources for asylum seekers, when you talk about keeping population in Chicago, growing equity across neighborhoods. So much of this comes back to, can I afford to live here? Can I afford to live in neighborhoods that will be invested in, right? That will be seen as worthy of public goods, of public transportation, of equitable resources and services.
And I think what really sort of gets me is that, again, all the fear mongering, business is going to leave, it's going to hurt downtown and neighborhoods. But here's the thing, businesses are already leaving. There's been sort of this exodus of major corporations piecing out for whatever reason, since before Johnson, since before Lightfoot.
Yeah. let's stay on the conversation of affordable housing, but sort of move back towards asylum seekers, because Katrina, you've also been following the state's rental assistance program. We talked a little bit about this last week, which, for individuals staying in temporary shelters, they have had some access to funding to get more stable housing, but that funding source has really dwindled as, the year and a half, 2 years has gone on.
Yeah, the applications for the state rental assistance program opened in December 2022. And in mid-November, the state was like, okay, you know what? We want to give everyone in the shelters a chance to get this rental assistance program. So we're cutting it off to anyone new who comes into the shelter. And on top of that, we're changing it from 6 months to 3 months instead. And so the goal with that was to try to get more people to be able to access the program. I think the problem that we're seeing, though, so 3 months is just not enough time for people to be able to settle in Chicago. I mean, these people have been living in shelters for however many months now, right? More than 3 months for many people. And they've still struggled to find housing, to find jobs, or to find any sort of way to find stability in the city. And that's with the city's help with case managers in the shelters. And so it's kind of like, how are people expected to be able to just move out and be able to move out and find stability in 3 months?
Yeah. And when we were talking about it last week, and then if you are able to secure funding, or if you are able to secure an apartment, right, just getting an apartment isn't building stable, comfortable housing. You still need furniture, right? You still eventually will have to cover that rent on your own.
Yeah, it's kind of absurd. I heard one story from one of the volunteers we were talking to. And so this family got set up in an apartment, outside of the shelter, finally getting home. No one set up their utilities for them. So they had no hot water, no heating. It was so cold. They ended up going back to the shelter because they felt like it was a better place to live than their own apartment. And that was because there was no support for them to be able to set up those sorts of utilities, because that's not information people are given when they're moved out. Like, how am I supposed to, I'm new to this country. How am I supposed to know I'm supposed to set up gas, electric, water? I mean, when I turned 18, I moved to an apartment. I didn't even know how to do any of that stuff either.
I think we are headed for a really scary and sad cliff at some point this year, because it feels like even with the disorganization of the shelter system, there was at least some ability to be face-to-face, to provide paperwork, to interface with individuals. But now that you've sort of sent them out into the city across different neighborhoods, and so I feel like we're leading towards a cliff of just thousands of these individuals lost in the shadows. We're talking about finding temporary housing, but let's be clear. An asylum case can take years and years. And then if you don't get it, now you see a cliff where people are falling into the shadows. And so, again, I understand the city and the state are, and nonprofit orgs are in many cases working tirelessly to provide resources on a situation that is truly untenable. But despite that, what we have done, what we have built has not been enough. And the consequences we'll face in months' time as people are finding themselves being kicked out starting today and tomorrow. It really terrifies me in the coming weeks and months. It really does.
What does Colgate mean by live life to the brightest? Could it be a rich glass of red sipped inside a Parisian cafe on a snowy night when my gaze is met by a tall, mysterious... I mean, brushing is directed with Colgate Optic White Pro Series toothpaste gives you a visibly whiter smile in just 3 days, so you can live life to the brightest and finish that glass without worrying about teeth stains. Colgate Optic White. Find it at all major retailers.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at ShipStation.com and use the code POD. That's ShipStation.com with the code POD.
Before we move on to some good news, Jamie, a story you recently published for Block Club Chicago kind of shows the beauty or what can be accomplished when we invest in affordable housing and community. You wrote about the Rosenwald Apartments. What is that and why is it so close to your heart?
So the Rosenwald Apartments, now called Rosenwald Courts, formerly known as the Michigan Boulevard Garden Apartments, was sort of an experiment done by Julius Rosenwald, who used to be the former CEO of Sears, Roebuck and Company back in the early 20th century, where he wanted to prove that if you provided Black folks with safe, comfortable, and affordable housing, they could rise above their station. Like, this is a hella paternalistic view of things, of course.
I was finna say it's definitely got that early 1900s white man view.
Benevolent racism that we've come to love. He was sort of inspired by public housing or subsidized housing developments in New York and Vienna, Austria. And he came back to Chicago. He builds this thing, and for about 30, 40 years, it's kind of like the epicenter of Black life in the city. A lot of notable Black folks live there. Robert Taylor, who is,
the namesake of the Robert Taylor homes.
He managed the building for a time. Quincy Jones's mother was also a manager. You had the likes of Nat King Cole, Gwendolyn Brooks. So you have all these Chicago luminaries sort of making this place home. And the Defender, the building features really prominently in Defender Society pages back in the day. So from tea parties to cotillions and marriage announcements, it's a really fascinating thing. So, Rosenwald's vision wasn't all that altruistic and that he wanted to turn a profit. The idea was,
we can make money on affordable housing.
It didn't really shake out that way. But again, amazing what happens when you do something kind of out of the kindness of your heart. A lot of these folks were able to move on from that building. Unfortunately, that kind of led to the decline of the building itself. It falls under the control of the Chicago Housing Authority. And a few years after that, it shut down. And there's this difficult movement to sort of get it reopened. There are a lot of people sort of fighting against it because they're afraid of what it will bring. They, have an idea of that, the same problems that plagued the Rosenwald before its closure with crime and drugs would return. But you have a group of super passionate residents led by Bobby Johnson, this really amazing woman who passed away before the Rosenwald was reopened, who fought to get it reopened. And so in 2016, it happened. But it's kind of a bittersweet tale. You're talking to these residents who once lived there, they're sharing their stories. And one of them came back after leaving there 40 years ago. And she's telling me about how different the vibe is now. The sense of community isn't as strong as it was. People sort of keep to themselves. And also that kind of goes into how the housing came back, and that back in the day, you used to have these larger units, these larger apartments for larger families. Now you're looking at studios and 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. And I'm like, okay, well, that works for seniors, but families tend to have, a little more than, a lot more kids for these 2-bedroom apartments. Math isn't really mathing there, but that's sort of indicative of the problems we're having with providing affordable housing. I grew up in Rosenwald. I arrived there with my mom in the 80s, and some of the people I interviewed for the stories, one was with my babysitter, another one was taught by my mom how to bartend, which was really great. But he didn't know I existed, which is also very weird because I went to school with his brother. My mom hid a child that, she was hiding children out here like Drake. It's very weird.
She wasn't hiding you from the bar. She was hiding the bar from you.
So yeah, what I also found really fascinating, one of the most notorious race riots in the city, well, outside the city, the Cicero race riot, where the CTA bus driver moved in to Cicero with his family and was literally bombed out of their homes. They wound up at the Michigan Boulevard Garden Apartments after being forced to leave. My jaw dropped. I'm like, wow, it's a great storied building, and I'm just proud to be part of it. So
yeah, I have walked past it before and did not know this history, and so I'm glad I know it now. How the Rosenwald Apartments became a city within a city, and its neighbors became family. We'll drop a link for you in the show notes. Like every episode of City Cast Chicago, after talking about some big stories, we love to end with some good news. This can be an event you went to, something you're looking forward to this weekend, or just something bright happening in your world. Katrina, what's your some good news for folks this week?
Well, yesterday I spent some time at the Rizal Center. It's on Irving Park Road near Buena Park, and did some karaoke with some Filipino elders in the Chicago community. So there was like 50 people coming for their bi-weekly kapihan, which is like a coffee hour. So everyone came for some line dancing, snacks, and karaoke.
All right, I got a couple of questions here because we done some karaoke episodes. I host a show called Karaoke Storytellers where we have people perform like a 5 to 10 minute true story, and then they sing a song that is thematically related. What's your karaoke song, Katrina?
Oh, I have to say California King Bed by Rihanna. I think that song is just a strong ballad that I really love. And also, I first found out about it when I was like 12, and obviously I didn't know what it really meant, but I was really vibing with this song, and I still do, so.
I love that. Is this something that happens every month that if people are interested, they can check out?
Yeah, it's the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, and it's from 9:30 a.m. till like the rest of the day, basically. The karaoke never stops. So definitely check it out at the Rizal Center.
Sounds good. You already know where you can find a link. Jamie, let's get you in here. What's your some good news?
Well, I don't know if you guys know, but this weekend is the St. Patrick's Day parade, and I like to attend the parade just because it's exciting to see people like super like they're.
I love learning all of the different things you are into, Jamie. I appreciate that.
There is so much love on St. Patrick's Day. When you go downtown, you check out the parade, and everybody's like in their green.
I was gonna say which one. There are 4.
The downtown one is from. Like I don't like I hear the South Side the South Side one is lit, and that's great. But like no, I like the downtown one. It's close to home. I can hop on the metro. And be done with it. But like it's really cool to see all the floats and the parades. I mean, all the people, and also when you post game at a bar, you're likely to drink for free, and I love that too. So,
who doesn't love free drinks?
But exactly.
I had nothing to say to it. I was like, that is a great assumption for you to make. I imagine there would be a listener that go, me? And I'm like, well, when nobody talking to you? If you are interested, the St. Patrick's Day Parade kicks off at 12:15 on Saturday, and it's preceded by the Dying of the Chicago River at 10 a.m. If you wanted to know why and how the Chicago River is died, we did a quiz show yesterday with our producers and myself, so go back and listen to that. Before we get out of here, I've got some good news, and mine is a shout out to these group of entrepreneurs who are L1 fellows. The L1 retail store is a business incubator located on the Arts Block at the historic First L station along Garfield Boulevard in Washington Park. And so shout out to Progression, Soma Gyms, and Cali Decor. Each of these entrepreneurs have been given an opportunity to open up their very first retail store. I own a bunch of Progression merch. I've got this great Macy Jemison long sleeve t-shirt that I love from them. They have these great jackets, Let Black Boys Be, that I really enjoy. Soma Gyms is one of those local entrepreneurs I met at the last Silver Room block party. There was one of the vendors, and I went up and bought some rings and some bracelets, so I was excited to see them. And then Cali Decor, who I haven't had the chance to shop with, hopefully I can visit them. Their grand opening is today from 11 a.m. to 7. And I'm just really excited to see these folks who, I've kind of been watching indirectly online on like Instagram grow their businesses to now have a brick and mortar. I know that means so much to them. And so I'm glad this fellowship has been able to offer them that opportunity. Again, for all of the stories we talked about today, I will drop links in the show notes so you can learn more. I got to give a huge thank you to our guest today from Block Club Chicago, Jamie Nesbitt Golden. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
And from Borderless Magazine, your first time, but definitely not your last, Katrina Pham.
Thanks for having me.
Before we let you go, I got to give a huge thank you to the people who make City Cast Chicago possible. Our executive producer is Simone Alisea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Our newsletter editor is the one and only Sydney Madden. Our roving producer is Elizabeth Kama. The music we all love is from Sam Thousand, All the Kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Also, let's give a huge thank you to the host of City Cast Chicago, Jacoby Cochran. From what I hear, that boy be working hard every day for y'all. Hey, and sign up to become a member of CityCast Chicago by visiting membership.citycast.fm. We gonna be back bright and early on Monday. Hopefully you'll join us. Jamie, what's your favorite part of the parade? Like, what's your favorite float to see, or what's the thing that brings you back every year beyond the fray drinks?
See, I'm not gonna. So I like the shade that the politicians get for when they walk by. Like, I love hearing all the color commentary when, like, you know, say like Alexi Janulius decides to walk through.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie. At least the next couple times I see him, until he get them digital IDs passed, I'm gonna be showing love. Like, come on, Janulius. And as soon as they get them digital IDs, back to the bullets. To the guillotine with him. I lose too many IDs. I need mine to be online. The number of times I've gone into a bar and shown a picture of my passport, and they just be like, bro, I can't do that.